Hi, good evening. I'm Ann Peters from the Pulitzer Center, and I'm glad you're joining us today for the webinar, Hurricanes Amid Pandemic, a Community Forum. We are so pleased to be organizing this session with Southerly Magazine, a terrific organization you'll be hearing a bit more about later on. As we wait for more of the audience to join us, please let us know in the chat where you're listening in from. The Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit journalism and education organization based in Washington, D.C. Our mission is to elevate engagement with the public with underreported issues through direct support for journalism and through education and outreach programs. We support more than 170 reporting projects each year on global and local issues. On our website at pulitzercenter.org, please take a look under our reporting issues page, where we bring together this work by themes, including on racial justice, environment, migration, public health, and more. Our education programming spans elementary schools to graduate degree programs and outreach to the broader public. We have developed a strong university program connecting journalists with college campuses in person and now virtually, and to engage with students. We also award reporting fellowships every year to students from these university partners, now numbering more than 35. On our K-12 education front, we reach thousands of students and educators via class visits, online sessions, and professional development workshops. We also organize public events and webinars such as this one. Now a few logistics before we move on to tonight's conversation. We will start with our guests and then have time for questions from the audience. You'll see a Q&A icon on your screen. You can begin adding your questions at any time throughout the remarks, so please add something there as soon as something comes to your mind. There's also a chat icon on your screen, and we hope that you'll use that, besides telling us where you're listening in from, for more specific technology questions. Please note that all attendees are muted, but if you cannot hear us for some reason, please let us know via the chat. We wanted to let you know that we are also recording this session to post online for others who could not join us today. And there will also be a brief survey once our session ends. As you will learn more during the session, remember that Hurricane Laura was one of the strongest storms to hit Louisiana in over 150 years. And it was also the first major hurricane to make landfall in the US during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just 6 weeks after Laura, Hurricane Delta hit the same region. And now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator who has been covering the region for a while now. We are honored to be joined by Carly Berlin, Gulf Coast Correspondent for Southerly Magazine. For the last several months amid the pandemic, Carly has been reporting on the aftermath of these storms that I mentioned with the aid of a Pulitzer Center grant. Carly's series, How Louisiana Communities Are Navigating Hurricane Recovery During a Pandemic, has focused on challenges facing Black voters in Lake Charles after the storms, the mounting disaster's mental health toll on teachers and students, and the housing crisis caused by hurricane damage, mass evictions, and the lack of federal aid. Now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Carly to introduce you to our other guests and to open this community forum. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anne, and I'm so grateful for the support I got from the Pulitzer Center to do this reporting. I hope everyone here in Louisiana has stayed dry today. You can probably hear the rain and thunder outside of my window here, which somehow feels fitting for our discussion. But I'm really excited to introduce our panelists in Lake Charles. So joining me today is Tasha Guidry, who is the co-founder of Lake Charles Black Business Owners and a voter education advocate in the city. After Hurricanes Laura and Delta hit Lake Charles just weeks before the presidential election, she coordinated candidate debates for local races and worked to get information to displaced voters through social media. Lisa Morgan is a history teacher at LaGrange High School in Lake Charles and a longtime union representative with the Calcasieu Federation of Teachers and School Employees. Once schools reopened after the storm, she needed to commute over an hour to and from Lake Charles each day because her rental there was damaged. And Hailey Barnett is a staff attorney at Acadiana Legal Service Corporation, a nonprofit law firm providing legal aid to low-income Louisianans. She specializes in disaster work and works out of the corporation's Lake Charles office. So I'm so excited to follow up with everybody today and have a conversation about what things look like in Lake Charles now, almost 7 months after Hurricane Laura hit in August. And Tasha, I want to start with you. We first met in mid-October, just a few weeks after Hurricane Delta hit Lake Charles. When I came to the city for the first time, you really helped me get my bearings and took photographer Katie Sikora and I on a driving tour of town. And one of the things that you showed us was the disparity in early cleanup efforts between predominantly Black and white neighborhoods in the city. Black neighborhoods in North and Central Lake Charles still had piles of debris on the roads, and white neighborhoods in South Lake Charles had been more or less cleared. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about how those cleanup efforts have looked these last few months.
Sure. And, thank you for having me again tonight, and for making us a part of your expose on the storms. But the cleanup efforts have not changed much since your visit, shockingly so. While we have had a more concerted effort in the debris removal process and pickup, in fact, you won't find as much debris as you actually saw when you and I did the tour, but you still can see the stark differences between the neighborhoods. These differences were actually present before the storms. However, the storms have brought to light, some of the issues that we have within our community that other people have centrally been oblivious to. Right here in our own backyards. The city recently had a city cleanup initiative for the month of March. And I had the opportunity to do some walking through both Central Lake Charles with a now seated city councilman. I helped him clean up his neighborhood along a major roadway. And then myself and a couple of organizational members, we adopted a street, a major road in North Lake Charles, and we took to the streets there. What we found in North Lake Charles was very disappointing. We had a lot of street signs that were still down. And this was along a major street. It's Goss Boulevard in Opelousas. So it's a major thoroughfare. So if you don't know where you're going, or your GPS, which sometimes brings us strange places, you might not know exactly where you're going because many of the street signs are still down. So we found ourselves, walking and collecting trash and debris and picking up signs so people could actually see, like, no outlet or no pass through, or, names of streets. But we also had to remove a lot of shrubbery in order to collect trash. And a lot of that comes from most of the neighborhoods either being older residents that may not be here right now, and a lot of residents that were renters. So we also have a lot of vacant properties there. So there's still a lot of cleanup that has to be done. I would like to see the signs up as soon as possible. It's been like 8 months, maybe a little bit more. So we have to do more in Central and in North Lake Charles.
Thank you for that. You're also, like I mentioned, the co-founder of Lake Charles Black Business Owners and a small business owner yourself. And I remember you telling me before about your concerns around Black business owners struggling to recover from both the pandemic and then the 2 hurricanes. And I'm wondering just how the members of your group have been faring these last 6-7 months now.
Oddly enough, our members have fared pretty well. I think the hardest hit was a gentleman that owns a catering company. Obviously, it started with him, with most of us during the pandemic. And of course, then we've had 3 storms thereafter, because we had both of the storms and then we had the ice storm. So we just can't win over here in Southwest Louisiana right now. But the gentleman that owned the catering company, he actually took the heaviest hit out of all of us. And then next would have been those of us that work within the legal community. I pretty much had all but client stoppage because there were no courts. So for myself, there were no clients coming in. So it was the same for the attorney firms that we have that are members of our group. If they're not working, their clients aren't working, and many of them have their clients on payment plans. So that means if they're not working, they're not coming in to make payments. Some members may have taken advantage of the PPP loans, which I think has been very beneficial. And we've been instrumental in helping to get that information out to the community. But not everybody did. I'm one of the fortunate ones that I have other means to generate revenue, thank God. So for the most part, we all did pretty well. Our construction companies that are part of our group, they did extremely well after the storms. So we did pretty good, but we still have very many businesses, Black and otherwise, that are still struggling. Some have actually closed down completely, and some have relocated to other places because they just don't want to have to deal with this again.
I want to turn now to Lisa. Lisa, when we spoke in December, when I was reporting on schools reopening in Lake Charles, you were commuting back and forth from Lafayette, an hour away, juggling a mix of in-person and virtual teaching. And many of your students were also displaced. Can you bring us up to date on what things look like at LaGrange now?
Yes, I can, Colleen, and thank you once again for having me. I am still commuting an hour away from Lafayette to Lake Charles. I have several of my students are still commuting as well as faculty and staff. We've been hit heavy hard, and it's a lot of housing. It's lack of housing that's there. If we do have housing, it's not affordable. A lot of renters have gone up. So if you're looking for a 1-bedroom, you may be paying $1,000. 2 bedrooms, $1,500 to $2,000, and 3 bedrooms, $3,000. So the lack of affordable housing for my students, for what their families can afford to pay for, it's kind of non-existent right now. We are face-to-face. I am glad to know that in January, we did receive a lot more students that started coming back face-to-face. They're living in multiple families living in homes together to make it. And I serve a lot of juniors and seniors. So of course they do want to graduate from the school that they've been going to, all their high school years. So their dedication and devotion, it shows that as well. One of the good things I do want to bring to light is that the girls basketball team, they have won the state championship 2 years in a row. And it was a highlight for them. One of my students who's on the basketball team, she commutes back and forth from Beaumont. And it was very highlight for her. I was very excited and very proud of her. I took a busload of students to Hammond, Louisiana to actually see them play and receive that championship. And they were highlighted on the Today Show. And it was awesome for them. Our building took a heavy hit, and we are still going through trying to fix up and deal with what we have. We've had a heavy storm today with rain, and as it rained outdoors, it rains in the building. So as you see puddles around the sidewalks, streets, we have puddles in our schools. So we're trying to deal with that. We're trying to fix up what we have and just kind of make do into perhaps the summer where we can get a team to come in and kind of really fix it up to where it used to be. It's going to take a while. It's a lot. It's very stressful, for both students and teachers as well. We want to have some sense of normalcy with the COVID, especially, social distancing. We're doing a great job with that. Awesome sanitizing, keeping our distance, but the storm hitting us pushed us back. Then the ice storm pushed us back. It's like, we cannot get a break. As we get a groove and we think we're getting, back, something else comes up. And it's just one thing after another. But we're staying prayerful. Teachers are dedicated. They're there. Of course, like myself, I'm commuting. And I do that because education is a calling and I care about my students. And when I decide to take them to that trip to Hammond, of course, when I returned back to Lake Charles, I had to wait till every child was picked up. That was 11 o'clock at night, and I had to head back to Lafayette. But I do that because of the love of and passion for education and others there, all the teachers there that serve our students. We can't do it alone. We do it collectively with a great support staff. We have an awesome administrative team locally, as well as the school board, as well as Mr. Brookhouse. They're awesome, they're phenomenal. We just need support in Lake Charles. We need outside support from government. We really, really do, because our school district got hit really bad. And the students is mentally, I know we shared some things about that. We talked about that. We do have services that are provided for them. We have 3 counselors on site. We will also have Dr. Pearl, and she comes in, she offers her resources. She's certified in mental health, and she comes twice and see our students. Our teachers have services through Solution and EAP, and they are provided with special services for any type of mental health that they're seeking.
You touched on this a little bit, but your students have now, of course, missed a considerable amount of class time between the pandemic, the hurricanes, and then the winter storm last month. And I'm wondering if you can just speak a little bit to what the stakes are for losing so much learning time.
It's a lot. And so what we've done when we first started back, we were actually doing alternate days. So students that last name ended with A through K, they came Mondays and Wednesdays, and students with last names L through Z came Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, we now become every day. Every student goes every day. And then we also, some of our holidays were taken from us, which is great because the students need the time and we need the time to be with them. And so we didn't have the full holiday like we would normally for Christmas, even for spring break, even for Mardi Gras. And then we're also extending all the way to June. And that, it's needed because we need to make up as much time as possible because that's very critical.
I want to pivot now to Hailey. So throughout my time working on this project, I heard again and again that the problem in Lake Charles was the lack of rental housing, as both Tasha and Lisa have spoken to. And, actually hearing Lisa's story in particular helped me kind of figure out my focus for the last piece in the series about the many challenges facing renters since the hurricanes, ultimately causing people to become unhoused in the area. And that's why I reached out to Hailey in December. But Hailey, when we last spoke, you were telling me about the ways landlords have been able to bypass the CDC eviction moratorium and put out tenants in part because of just existing weak landlord-tenant laws in Louisiana. Can you just talk a bit about the housing trends that you're seeing in Lake Charles now?
Yeah, so I think when you interviewed me, it was in January, and the CDC moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent was extended by President Biden to January 31st. And I remember telling you, I'm really nervous for February. Well, the CDC moratorium was extended again to the end of March. And now I'm really nervous for April. Our office is about to be so busy because there are a lot of judges in the area who will not hear evictions on the basis of non-payment of rent. However, just because the CDC moratorium is in place does not mean eviction court is closed. Eviction court is still open, and we're still seeing evictions for non-payment that are cloaked in other reasons to get around the moratorium. Like we had talked about, the need to make repairs to the dwelling. We're seeing now there are unauthorized people who are not on the lease who are living on the property. And when you think about it, that's kind of a cyclical thing, because if you lose your housing and you have to move in with a family member who also may be a renter as well, it puts both of you at risk for COVID, but it also may put that family member who does have stable housing at risk because the landlord doesn't want that many people living on the property. So it's really, really difficult still. We're also seeing a lot of constructive evictions or self-help evictions, which is where the landlord disconnects the utilities without a final eviction judgment from a court. In Louisiana, there's no such thing as a self-help eviction, and landlords are not permitted to do this, but we're seeing it. We had people call into our office saying, I'm behind on my rent, but my utilities were disconnected. And sometimes all that takes to fix is a call to the landlord and saying, hey, you are not allowed to do this. But the landlords do push back, and they have said, oh, as soon as the eviction moratorium is, as soon as it expires, I'm going to get this person to court and evict them. I guess the good news is that the state's rental assistance program is now live, and both landlords and tenants are available to apply to it. It's not just, I think a common misconception is that only tenants can apply. No, landlords can apply as well. Calcasieu Parish has their own rental assistance program, as do some of the bigger parishes in the state. I believe it's Caddo, Lafayette, St. Tammany, Orleans, and Jefferson. They have their own programs, but the other parishes that don't have their own programs they still are going to be receiving rental assistance from the state. But I know for Calcasieu Parish specifically, we were allocated $13 million from the Department of the Treasury, and that application went live on March 15th, so last Monday. And we're just trying to get the word out about that and let people know that that is an option for them.
We also spoke about the difficulties many people have had securing continued rental assistance from FEMA after a second hurricane hit and kind of complicated that process. Can you just speak a little bit to some of the patterns that have showed up there?
Definitely. And I forgot this one kind of crucial thing that we have been seeing, I'm sorry, from the last talking point in the office. So if you have a year-long lease in Louisiana, what often happens is if your landlord doesn't terminate the lease or you don't move out, the lease goes month to month in a process called reconduction. And when you think about it, a lot of people have not had the opportunity to sign new leases. And we're a year into COVID now. And so a lot of people's leases are expiring, and the landlord, like you said, the weak landlord tenant laws, all the landlord has to do is give them 10 days notice before the end of the rental month. And hey, I want you out, I want my property back. So we're seeing a lot of that. And I think that's only gonna keep going. But for FEMA, man, it's just, as other people have said, between the two hurricanes and now the ice storm, with the new round of individual assistance that's been released to residents of Calcasieu Parish, I have a feeling that for the average person doing 3 separate FEMA claims within the span of 7 months, that's a lot. And FEMA themselves, they aren't duplicating claims. So, let's say you evacuated for both hurricanes Laura and Delta, and you had to pay for a hotel both times. Even though your Hurricane Laura and Delta claims are separate, you're not going to get evacuation hotel expenses back for, let's say, Delta if you got them for Laura. I've run into that before. And FEMA, it's just a slow moving train. And unfortunately, people needed rental assistance, and they needed temporary housing, and they needed home repair assistance yesterday, if not sooner. And it's just, people are on their second and third appeal rounds. And it can be really disheartening when, you send in all of your documents that FEMA's asked, and sometimes FEMA can come back and ask you for more documents, and it's hard. Let's say you are older and you're not very tech savvy. You can't just upload your documents to the FEMA website. You may have to fax them, or you may have to mail them. The mail is slow, and with faxes are just kind of wonky. You never know. And so let's say, your documents get lost in the mail. You're looking at just a delay. And, I bet people who do work at FEMA, I bet they're tired too. And, just with everybody having to balance their prior claims and with the hurricanes, and now maybe their current claims from the ice storm. I know a lot of people feel like FEMA did not help as much as they have in the past with hurricanes Laura and Delta, like they did for hurricanes Katrina and Rita 15 years ago. And so a lot of people are like, why am I even going to apply for this new round of assistance with the ice storm if I didn't get anything, or I was denied for hurricanes Laura and or Delta? I know that our mayor, who was recently reelected on Saturday, he has written letters to FEMA kind of decrying their temporary housing plan. There are rumors that temporary housing in full won't be to the level that they need to be by October of 2021. And that's almost a year from the second, that's a year from the second hurricane. It's a lot. And I think people are really tired. Like others have said, it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. People can't catch a break. And, dealing with all of the red tape that is FEMA, it can be pretty demoralizing when you're also trying to find a new place to live, or you're trying to put a new roof back on your house. It's just, I think it's really it's really hard. Another thing too, for continued rental assistance with FEMA often requires you to have a new lease agreement in hand. Well, if there's no available housing, I mean, Miss Morgan is commuting, back and forth from Lafayette still. If there's no housing available and it's not affordable, then how are you going to be able to find a lease? And, for so many people, they call this area home. They want to stay in the area, but for a lot of people, that's just not possible. Between the rising rents and the lack of available housing, it's just not, and it's really sad. And it's something that, I wish that there would be a more robust response from FEMA and from the federal government on.
I'd like to just put to all of you, I'd love it if you could just talk a little bit about what you see as the most pressing, lingering needs in Lake Charles at this point now, 7 months after Laura. whoever wants to take that first.
I guess I'll go first if y'all
start.
aren't sick of hearing from me. I think the most pressing need truly is housing, and affordable housing, whether it's in the form of temporary FEMA manufactured homes, whether it's in new construction. I know the city is asking people if they would like to be Section 8, housing choice voucher programs, more commonly known as Section 8. They would like to be HCVP landlords, and that could help potentially bring more affordable housing to the area. But it's hard to get people who, they may or may not want to enter into that type of agreement with the federal government. It's just I think just housing. And I just think people need support. After hurricanes, there's kind of always an outpouring of volunteers and food drives. And don't get me wrong, there still are volunteers. Like Tasha was saying with the Spring Clean LC, people are getting out there and really helping in the community. And the United Way is still providing grocery giveaways. But I think there just needs to be more sustainable, outreach and programs. And I guess for me, that's what I see are the most pressing needs, just housing and continued outreach.
For myself, I would say housing.
Yeah.
Oh, I
I'm
would
sorry,
say,
Tasha, you're right.
well, for myself, I think housing is a major factor in the issue, but even more pressing, we need accurate numbers, because right now we have absolutely no idea who is back in Lake Charles, which makes it kind of hard to, manage and deliver services. That became a factor during this last election. So I would like to see us, and it may take us going door to door, but actually finding an accurate accounting of who's back and where they're living. Because, like we've all said, everybody is displaced. So you have people that may have resided, like, let's say on Goss Street, that now may be living way across town. So we need to know who's back and exactly where they are, so we can assist them with housing. And then we have to make sure that the landlords and the lien holders are not falling through the gaps. If it wasn't for Hailey, I wouldn't have even known that landlords could apply for assistance. What we had seen happening was we've actually had homeowners and renters that were applying for the assistance, but were not still paying their bills. So this is why you have some of those issues with the landlord saying, oh, the moratorium is almost up, they got to go, sort of thing. And which is sad, because then we already have a housing homelessness crisis here in Lake Charles. So all we're doing is contributing and adding. So I think when we think about the needs, we need to think about everyone's needs that's actually a citizen here in Lake Charles. We can't just be focused on one particular demographic or one particular set. The problems that we're having right now faces each and every one of us. And we need mental health counseling. To say that we came to a grinding halt with the pandemic, and then months later, right into Laura, and then right into Delta, and then the kids were out of school, they weren't dealing with anything because they were used to being amongst each other. We're already social creatures. as human beings. So we were in self-isolation for so long. And then we had the storms, which also put us back in self-isolation. So right here in Southwest Louisiana, we're dealing with so many issues at one time. So I think for us, it would be expanding services and really finding the need. But before we can do any of that, and making sure that everybody is assisted, we actually need to find out who is back here and, get us an accurate count.
And I can add to that because that's one of the things that we've been working with at school, at LaGrange, and of course, across the parish. We don't know where our children are. We do have an attendance officer that goes out and he's searching. We as teachers have to make phone calls on a weekly basis, and we have to document in the system, who we have called. I myself make home visits. I'm old school, so I'm an old school teacher. I've gone to homes where addresses of students who used to live, and I'm looking at a slab. I'm looking at a home is split in half. So where are my children? We don't know where they are. Phones numbers are not working. They're disconnected. We just can't find them. So like Tasha stated, if they would have an accurate number, we would know how many and who is all in need. Housing is a must, but we do need to know, we need to have a number to see what we're working with. We can start at the schools. I would think that Calcasieu Parish, since we're wide open, we're really a large district, will be a good place to see, hey, how many students that are here, our families are home, they're here in Lake Charles that need housing, or how many families are commuting to Lake Charles to continue to be a part of Calcasieu Parish and need housing. That's another number digit there. Where are the ones who are lost? How many who are not here? And if you know someone that knows where they are, let's get a calculation on those needs there. That's one thing. Another thing with mental health is ongoing. That can never, ever stop. Being an educator, we have a special education department that runs nationwide in every school district, in every parish. Mental health is needed, not just with them, but mental health is needed on a daily basis with teachers, daily basis with support staff. We've all gone through so much, and we can't sweep that up under the rug. This is not the norm. So this has been, very tragic for us. So it's a lot that maybe people don't want to come on the forefront, or they kind of afraid or embarrassed to say that there is a need. But mental health is at the all-time high right now, and that should be on a high list for everyone as well, to keep students isolated, because we was isolated for so long, and they need that socialization. They need to be back at school. We want our children back at school. We as teachers are not afraid to be at school. We're practicing social distancing. We're making sure that our schools are sanitized. We're cleaning ourselves. Every day we have to clean. Every single time my classes switches and change, because I teach high school, we have to sanitize those desks before our next class come in. So we're doing everything to keep them safe. We have gloves, we have masks on hand, we take the temperature. We need our students back, and we need them face-to-face with us, because they learn better face-to-face, and then they need to be in a social environment to socialize, and we need to socialize. And I miss them more than I guess that they miss me, because I questioned for August the 24th to start, and boom, I got hit with the storm. And then I'm like, okay, when that passed, okay, we're going back again. Boom, here we go, another storm. We need each other, and we need it all. So housing first, a large count, and mental health. And let's get our children back into school. Let's get them. Computer is one thing, technology is great, but we all know technology fails us at times. Sometimes technology is not our best friend. So, whereas technology can help, and we're in a new era to use it, great, but it does not take the place of a teacher. It will not take the place of a caring teacher who can see in a child's eye that that child needs extra help, that that child needs extra attention in this certain manner, in this academic, and this skill, not through a computer screen. So we need our babies back.
I want to go ahead and turn us over to Q&A. Looking at a couple of questions here, but the first is from Gregory Landry, who asks, did this morning's storms rip the blue tarps off again?
I hope not. I haven't been home yet. But actually on my block, we only have 2 blue tarps that are left. And it's a couple of older residents. But I have discovered that they've been fighting back and forth with their insurance companies because they were, giving money for Laura, but then they had damage from Delta, and the insurance companies don't want to give them anything toward the damages for that particular storm. So they're working with an adjuster now and trying to get things right. But right now they have big camper trailers in the front yard. So that's another issue that we have here in Lake Charles. You'll find beautiful homes with big camper trailers right now in the front yard. Some of them not so cute, because people have absolutely nowhere to live. So blue tarps, I'm hoping that they're still there. It was pretty bad here this morning. I was more concerned with the street flooding than anything else. My actual house, my street looked like a pond, or a lake. Actually, it looked more like a lake or ocean. So I had to wait for a couple of hours before I could even leave for the water to go down. So that's going to be something that all of us are going to be apprehensive about, because we had issues, like Hailey said, with FEMA. Besides that, they actually came out to some neighborhoods and declared that we were in a 100-year floodplain. So we can't do any damage, anything on our work without permission from the city of Lake Charles, because they want us to elevate our property, which is going to be a whole nother homeowner expense. So we're dealing with a lot here in Lake Charles right now, and pretty apprehensive about the new storm season.
So we've got another question here from Walter McClatchy, who says, thanks for this presentation. I'm honored to work with Hailey at Acadiana Legal Service Corporation. I haven't seen Lake Charles since about 2 weeks after Laura, and I've never seen that kind of damage before. About half the roofs had blue tarps and another half needed them. Power lines, poles, and transformers on the ground, no electricity, very few working traffic lights, but I don't have to tell all of you. Has the situation improved?
I'd say it comes in fits and starts. I think people were really ready to get back to the repairs after the mandatory evacuation order was lifted for Laura. I think we were back here for 2 weeks, and then Delta came. And I think that dragged a lot of people down as far as the recovery process, the rebuilding process. But I drove Sunday. I drove back Sunday from Biloxi, and even driving in, you still see just mangled highway signs. The trees are so mangled. It looks like someone has clear cut some of the beautiful pines that are known for this part of the world. And it's improved. But like I said, I think in fits and starts, and I think everybody is ready for a return to normalcy. And I think everybody is just ready to, kind of see Lake Charles get back to what its former glory was. I moved here in July of 2020, so right before everything happened. And I've just been so incredibly proud of how everybody in the city is, one, so resilient, and two, even though they've been through so much, they don't let it shake them. They know that the brighter days are going to be coming. And I think that that's kind of where everybody is, even though it's hard, like what Lisa and Tasha were saying about mental health. Everybody, I think, has their really bad days.
I'd love to hear from all of you, what you think needs to happen before the next hurricane season, which is of course upon us in June. What are some of the more immediate things that can take place in the coming months before it starts? And, also curious to just hear a little bit about what gives you hope and keeps you going right now.
Lisa, you want to start?
I'll tell you what gives me hope and keeps me going is my students. Looking in their faces and knowing that they are the future generation. And I have to be strong for them. A lot of times I have to put my feelings aside and what I'm going through aside. As I spoke with you earlier, Carly, several months ago, you know, I shared with them what I went through because I wanted them to really be able to talk about, you know, the trauma that had happened in their lives. And I made it easier for them to share with me by saying what Dr. Morgan has gone through. You know, you never think, oh, wow, you know, and I said, I'm homeless. When you don't have a home and it's not in your name and your mail is not going there, you're homeless. So I wanted them to understand that we're all human, but we're in this together. And I got them to really, you know, share their stories, but to see that their willingness, they still want to come to school. They still want an education. They still want to make that difference in their lives. And they still have goals and dreams and their determination and their passion. That is what drives me. And that's what keeps me going. And that what wakes me up every morning at 3:30, because at 4:45, I'm on the interstate. At 5:30, I'm at LaGrange High School. And I'm practically turning on the lights with the custodian. When the weather was bad this morning and the water in the puddle was there, I was still there that early, fighting that rain, fighting that wind, but getting there to serve my students because I have to let them know and show them that someone cares. Besides all this that you're going through, we do care. Now, one of the problems I am having, and I kind of want to share with everyone, I'm noticing that the students now are taking on more jobs. I have more students now that are working to help mom, dad, or to help their families to have money to be able to come back to Lake Charles and afford to live. I have a student who, at age of 18 now, but she was living by herself, taking care of herself in her halfway livable home and trying to work and trying to go to school. And I'm bringing her work to her. I'm trying to get her there as I can and do whatever I can because, you know, the laws are so different on us. You know, we can't do like we used to do as teachers, you know, pick them up and take them here and there. You always have to have another teacher with you and so forth. But they're trying. And but the jobs, I'm just kind of, you know, the students now is like feeling it's their responsibility to make sure they have enough money to be able to afford housing, to be able to afford their families to live in their home by themselves instead of living in a home with multiple families. And so that's what I have to let them know school comes first, you know, because this is just a little bit quick money. This is not a lifetime career for you, you know. So that is one of the things that, you know, I see that my students have gone through this year more than ever before. They're taking on long hours at work and still trying to fight to come to school and be successful there.
And, you know, for myself, what gives me hope is actually the people of the community, because we've all experienced so much. And for those of us that are back and those of us that are trying to come back, but have nothing to come back to, that gives me hope. You know, cleaning up the neighborhoods, I think we need to do more of it. I would like to see the buildings that, you know, cannot be repaired, torn down so that we can start the rebuilding process. I'm very apprehensive about the upcoming season because we're not ready. We're not ready and we're not prepared at all. I actually read something a couple of weeks ago where hurricane season is predicted to start on May the 1st as opposed to June the 1st. So immediately that got me going and anxiety kicked in because I also have elderly parents that I help to take care of. And we're not from here, so evacuating, we don't have any family to go to. So we often find ourselves, you know, on the road looking for lodging from somewhere. But the city is not ready. We can't deal with another storm. And I think that is on everybody's mind right now. None of our houses are up to par just yet. We still have so much to do. Today was a great indicator as to what would happen with flooding, which I really haven't been concerned about today, but today was pretty bad. And it was just rain that we normally get here around this time of year. So we're not ready and we're not prepared at all. I would like to see a better response from the local government. We did an okay job, but there were certain things that transpired after the fact. And I actually was here after Laura because we didn't evacuate. We had nowhere to go. So we rode out Laura here. But immediately your first responding areas the roads need to be cleared. We had roadways that were impassable. So if you needed assistance, they couldn't even get to you because there was so much debris and litter. But of course, these storms were totally different from Rita, and I was here for Rita as well. But we have to do a better job of logistics, and that would be something that I would love to see the current administration work on. Logistics as far as getting everybody out there and some of the major roads cleared so that if something does happen, that the first responders can respond after the storm.
I think for me, what gives me hope is, so our office, we are only open by appointment only right now. And so every time I have a client appointment and whether it's just meeting with them to sign our initial paperwork or whether it's, helping them get an affidavit of small succession notarized so that they can work with FEMA to make repairs and prove that ownership. That gives me hope every day. And I can't wait for the day when, we will be open for walk-in appointments and we will be able to really help serve, especially our greatest low income and our elderly clients, because a lot of our elderly clients, they don't have the capability to just email us documents and everything. And so I'm really excited for when that day comes. And it's just really is the little victories that help the community get better. And it's why I love to do the work that I do. I guess as far as hurricane season, I'm really scared. I'm from Central Texas. I moved here a month before Laura hit. I truly had no idea what was going to happen. I just remember grabbing everything, valuable that I could. And I was just like, am I doing enough? I went and bought gas cans. Did I buy enough tarps? And that's another thing, evacuating and preparing for storms is expensive. And even if you have the money to do it, right now, it doesn't mean you'll have the money to do it next month when the next storm comes. And the fact that hurricane season is so dicey and it's such a gamble, it kind of prompted me to, and I know that not everybody has this luxury, and I know that I'm very blessed in this regard, but to just put a little money away each time, I get paid so that, when I do have a $250 Home Depot bill, I'm not like, oh, wow, that's wild. And yeah, because it was just crazy when Laura happened. But I will say, I guess when Delta happened, I was really a lot more prepared. And I feel like a lot of people who live, especially in this part of the country, they can be prepared because they've done this for so long, but preparation only goes so far. And you just don't know what the devastation is going to look like. And I do hope that, like Tasha was saying, there is more of a more robust local government and state government response. I know for temporary housing, the State Department of Children and Family Services and the Red Cross are working together to put people in hotels in New Orleans, which, I mean, that can, during hurricane season, that's not off the table as well. So you think about, let's say, for example, there's another, I hope not, but there's another Hurricane Laura type situation like Charles. And then there's one a few weeks later in New Orleans, kind of like a Rita, Katrina in 2005 right. situation. So I think that there just needs to be more preparation, and there needs to be a longer term solution for what happens after a hurricane as well. Because I know that a lot of the state services, I know the mega shelter in Alexandria closed its doors in early November. And to me, that wasn't enough time to stop sheltering people who had become unhoused.
So we've got a couple other questions here. This is a quick one directed to you, Hailey, also from Gregory Landry. If someone needs legal help, can they just drop in on the legal aid office there, or should they call first?
Unfortunately, no, they cannot just drop in, although I'm really excited for the day when that will happen. I don't know, but they can call. Our office phone number is 337-439-0377. Again, that's 337-439-0377.
And this is from Amin Al-Qadi. Did emergency response and sheltering activities in response to the 2 hurricanes lead to an increase in COVID infections? If so, what advice would you give to emergency managers and how to effectively respond and recover from disasters like Laura and Delta, but do so in a way that protects the health and safety of your community members?
That is a good question. We really don't know if the numbers increased. We were too busy trying to survive here. Our numbers actually increased as our levels of operation, when we reopened at different times, our numbers increased, like for the holidays, because we just couldn't keep away from each other. More or less after the storms, when we were out, delivering stuff to the different people in the neighborhoods, everybody had on masks. It was kind of hard to social distance sometimes, but I don't think that actually was an issue as far as our numbers increasing. Mostly everybody was gone. Very few people remained here after Laura. We actually adhere to getting out. It's just that if you're not from here, sometimes the hotels have a tendency to fill up really fast. And they always tell you to go north instead of east or west, just in case the storm changes. We actually wound up staying here because we couldn't find a hotel anyplace else. So we rode out the storm here, but I don't know exactly if our numbers changed because our numbers were already high. I don't see much of a difference. As far as what they could do in order to prepare better, that's a good question. We have some facilities here, like Burton Coliseum, which is pretty huge, and we've used it before after Rita for a shelter, as well as the Civic Center. But I would never recommend anybody staying here for a storm because we're right off of the Sabine River. Our storms normally take a shift at the very last minute, and we get hit the hardest. So I definitely would not recommend opening up our shelters unless it was absolutely necessary. But we do need a more comprehensive and long-term plan with some of our sister cities. But then we also have to think about and factor in when storms come inland, they normally do traditionally go north. So Shreveport will get the tornadoes and not the wind and water, as much as we do. But they normally get tornadoes toward Shreveport and Leesville. So maybe we can work on something long term. I've been telling people, get a game plan in place early on. I normally start trying to book a hotel 1 week out, if possible. It's somewhere in Texas, as far as to the border as I possibly can, to make sure that I have somewhere to go. And then, of course, you can always cancel it at the last minute. But every now and then, you just can't predict where the storms are going to go. But I don't think that the storms are actually a factor in our numbers increasing.
I think that FEMA, it's hard, right? Because during a pandemic, you want to use non-congregate sheltering as much as you can, which is, avoiding using the bigger coliseums where people can't socially distance, right? So you think, what's the next non-congregate sheltering option? A hotel, but then people need to check into those hotels. It's really hard to say one way or another what the best way to do it is. And of course, if you can't afford a hotel, what are you going to do? You're going to go shelter with family members. I'm, like I said, I'm from Central Texas. And so I had to go shelter with my mom a few times. I had to go shelter with my dad in Alabama. And so that kind of drives up the numbers as well. But as to, the best practices. I wish I had a better answer, but I will say that the use of non-congregate sheltering definitely needs to be at the forefront, and whether that's building sort of quasi hotels that are FEMA owned and operated, maybe that are like dormitories, if you will, utilizing space like that. I think that really is the future.
Well, I want to wrap us up and turn it over to my editor, Lindsay, to close us out. But I just want to thank you all overall on the screen for joining me to follow up and just share with folks, what's kind of going on in Lake Charles at this point. And so I'm excited to turn it over to Lindsay Gilpin, who's the founder and editor-in-chief of Southerly, who's going to finish this up.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much, Tasha, Hailey, and Lisa and Carly for such a fantastic conversation. I feel like I've read all of these stories many times over throughout this process, and I feel like I'm still learning so much about not just Lake Charles, but just how all of these issues are intertwined. So thank you for just being open and vulnerable about your experiences. And I just wanted to say that in front of everybody. So we are really, really thankful for, of course, like I said, our panelists, and also to the team at Southerly, and most especially our supporters at the Pulitzer Center. Without you all, this reporting wouldn't have been possible. Carly wouldn't have been able to make as many trips to Lake Charles as she did. We wouldn't have had this amazing photography that we did by Katie Sikora. And special thanks to Kayla Edwards, who is running this session right now and doing all the behind the scenes work. So we really appreciate that. Thank you to our audience. We really appreciate you joining us today, and for your questions, and really good questions at that. And for those of you who are, if you're able to and have the means, we'd really like to remind you that both the Pulitzer Center and Southerly are both nonprofit journalism organizations, and we depend on donor support. Southerly started just a couple of years ago, and so we're still pretty scrappy, and any support you give us goes directly to reaching funding journalists and trying to reach more people with our work. We'll be continuing this reporting in 2021. So, this particular series is over, but Carly has made a lot of relationships in Southwest Louisiana, and we're really excited to launch this next kind of phase of this particular project, which is kind of working on a printed product to really reach people that we weren't able to reach through our digital, like online stories that we shared, via social media or whatever. And one of the themes of that is going to be mental health, because that, like you probably noticed, this came up so often in all of her reporting and in all of our conversations. And we really want to do something valuable for folks in Lake Charles and across Southwest Louisiana as we prepare for the next hurricane season. So we'll be working with clinics and other community organizations and venues to get some of this stuff distributed and do some storytelling around mental health and disasters. So I put the form, and I'll put it in again. If you want to fill that out, or if you want to share it with your friends or family or neighbors, it's all confidential, so you can just submit it to us, and we'll contact you, or Carly will contact you about anything that we might want to pursue in reporting or publish. And I think the last thing is, stay with us a few minutes longer to take a brief survey after we officially end today's session. That'll really help the Pulitzer Center. And there are many more events at the Pulitzer Center, so just visit the website for more details. One of a really good one is the 2021 conference, which is obviously online, April 20th through 23rd. Carly and I are both speaking on, she's speaking on her reporting, and I am speaking a little bit more broadly about Southerly. And so we'd love for you to join us there, and also journalists from around the world who will be online talking about their work. So registration is open, and you can select a range of ways to connect. Feel free to share. We'll have a recording of this, and we can share that with you after the fact. And as always, please reach out to Carly or I if you want more information about our reporting. And so thank you again for everything, everyone. I am just so grateful for this and for allowing us to have this conversation.